Floral design mechanics are techniques or tools that designers use to keep flowers in place when they're designing. These are especially useful when you're using a wide bowl or a wide vase where the flowers can't stay in place by themselves. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some of the most common floral design mechanics that designers use. And if you stay till the end, I'll tell you about one common mechanic that I myself don't use, and I don't recommend you use it either. My name's Ellen Frost. I'm the owner of Local Color Flowers. I've been a florist for 17 years. I'm building a community of flower nerds online. The first floral design mechanic I'm going to show you today is probably the simplest and easiest one to get started with. It's using some 1/4 inch waterproof tape to create a grid on any wide vase that you're using. So this 1/4 inch tape comes in clear and green. And while the clear is probably better able to be hidden on a clear glass vase like this, I actually prefer the green tape. It seems to stick a little bit better. I don't know if that's just me or if it really does stick better, but I like the green better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some pieces of this 1/4 inch tape to create a grid on the top of my vase. And what that grid is going to do is create smaller holes for the flowers to be placed in. You can put one piece across the other way. You can put 2, 3, depending on how big your vase is, how many stems you want to place in there. I think I usually do 2 or 3 across each way so that my grid is about 1 inch opening. I have 1 inch openings here. That to me is a good amount of space to have the flowers stay in place. A couple things to remember when you're using this waterproof tape. You want to make sure that your glass is nice and dry, or your vase is nice and dry. Even though that this tape is waterproof, if the glass is wet, it really will not stick. So you want to make sure that it's nice and dry before you put it on. The other thing is that depending on how heavy your stems are, so if you're using something branchy or something really heavy, it's possible that the tape can get lifted off of the vase. One thing I do to ensure that my tape does not lift off of the vase is that I'll take another piece here and I'll put it right around the edge of the vase, securing the edges of the tape. So you can see now it's very secure. This is really not going to come up. You can really pull on it, it's not going to come up. Be sure that when you make your design, you cover up that tape. You don't want to have any of these mechanics showing. Some mechanics I don't really mind showing, and I'll tell you about those as we go. But the tape is not something that I want shown on my design. So you want to make sure that when you're designing, you're putting either foliage or flowers right at the rim of the vase so that that mechanic is covered up. The next mechanic I want to show you is chicken wire. Chicken wire is actually the mechanic that I use most often. While the tape method is very easy, I find that the chicken wire makes me feel like my flowers are more secure when I'm designing. So chicken wire is exactly what it sounds like. It's chicken wire. It's wire that is used to create chicken coops. So there are 2 different kinds of chicken wire on the market. One is metal, so this is just a metal chicken wire. The other is a vinyl coated chicken wire, so it's like a plastic coated chicken wire. While I don't love using plastic, this plastic chicken wire we reuse this all the time. So after I make a design, we'll take the chicken wire out, wash it, and reuse it. So we have a whole bucket of chicken wire that we reuse over the course of years. We're still using the same chicken wire year after year. The vinyl coated one makes it easier to wash and reuse because it doesn't get rusty. The metal does get rusty if you reuse it enough. The other thing is that this vinyl coated one is easier on your hands. It's a lot more pliable when you're using it. So what I'll do is I will cut a piece of chicken wire. I don't have an exact measurement for each vase. You have to just do trial and error. So I will cut a piece that is going to be placed inside my vase. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that we call the burrito method. I'm going to attach both of the ends together, just using their little end pieces to connect them. Then I'm going to curl the ends up on each other to create a burrito or a ball. Then I'm going to put it inside of my vase. Now doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to fit inside of there. If your chicken wire fits securely and it's nice and snug, that's ideal. Then you don't need any tape or any putty or anything else to hold it in place. If it is loose, or if the vase is bigger than the piece of chicken wire, you can just take your same 1/4 inch waterproof tape and you can put a piece or two over the top of it. To keep the chicken wire from moving around. You want to just make sure that it is secure in the vase so that when you start to put your stems in, it doesn't move. If you don't have tape, you can also use, this is just plumber's putty. You can get this at the hardware store. And if you're interested in any of these mechanics, I'm going to have a link in the notes to a resource list of where you can get all of these mechanics yourself. But sometimes I use plumber's putty, which is just a putty that you can take out in little pieces. Take a little piece out. And you can put it right on the edge of the chicken wire and secure that to the inside of the vase. And that will just hold it nicely secure inside of there. So you can use the chicken wire on its own, you can use some tape to hold it in place, or you can use some putty. Any of those techniques work, as long as your chicken wire is nice and secure. The next mechanic that I'm going to show you is one that I use a lot. It's called a cage. And cages come in all different shapes and sizes. There are cages that are like vintage cages, like this one here. This one's probably 100 years old. And it does the same thing that the chicken wire does. It's the same thing that the tape does. It creates a grid. So you could put this inside of a large vase. I use this a lot inside of like an urn for a wedding. And you can use this to place your stems in. There are also smaller cages like these that can be fastened into the bottom of a vase. There are also more modern, these are plastic cages that are created by Holly Chapel. They come in a lot of different sizes and they are reusable. You can wash these and reuse them. We have had these for, I don't know, since they came out maybe 8 or 10 years ago. And you're going to do the same thing. Like if you have a vase like this is a little loose, so I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to use a little bit of putty to just keep it in place. So attach a little bit of putty to the bottom, stick it in place. That will secure my cage inside. Small cages, large cages, these come in, these are basically a chicken wire substitute if you don't feel like cutting the chicken wire every time. These are already made, pre-made cages that you can use in a vase. These are also used in installations, so that's another way to use them. But I use them mostly in vases. And these are best for opaque vases. I generally don't want to see these mechanics in a clear glass vase, so it's best used in an opaque vase that you can't see through. The next mechanic I'm going to show you is one of my favorites. These are floral frogs. Floral frogs are an old mechanic from the turn of the century in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were really popular up until like the 1950s. They were probably the most common floral mechanic used. There are a ton of different kinds of frogs. They are metal, they can be ceramic, glass, decorative. They're all different kinds. The ones that I use the most are these few here. So the first one is a pin frog, which you can see is just a metal base with these pretty sharp pins stuck in them. And what this does is fastens to the bottom of your vase and allows you to place stems right inside the frog. Frogs, these pin frogs come in all different shapes and sizes. So there's round ones, this is a rectangular one, there's oval ones, all different sizes and shapes. The next type of frog is a hairpin frog. You can see that this doesn't have the sharp, straight pins like the pin frog does. These are actually a little more flexible and a little more forgiving when you put a stem in. To me, this is my favorite kind of frog to use because you can put stems in at different angles, where the pin frog really does feel like you want to put the stem straight up and down. This is also a pin frog, but it's called a cup pin frog, which means that it has a water source. You can pour water right in here and use that as a standalone vase. So these are very popular in like ikebana or in really more minimalistic designs. I love these. I use all of these frogs very often. This is just an example of a glass frog, which is like a historic glass frog. You can see that it has a spot for water. You fill that with water. And then the top of it has these holes in it that you can place your flowers right in and hold them in place. When you're securing your frog in your vase, there's a couple things you want to just be careful of. The first thing is you want to make sure that your vase is totally clean and totally dry. Your frog will not adhere to a wet vase. I'm telling you right now, we've tried it a million times. We've had all kinds of problems with this. I actually made an entire video about the problem of frogs tipping over because they weren't secured correctly. So you want to make sure that your vase is totally dry, clean and dry. And then you're going to use some plumber's putty, or if you have floral cling, or we often use a product called alien tape. You can use that for any of those things. And what you want to do is you want to place this putty along the edge of the frog. And you want to do that all the way around so that when you stick your frog in your vase, no water can get inside underneath the frog. When water gets up underneath the frog, that's when it starts to pull away from the vase. So you want to make sure that when you put your putty on, just get another piece here. It's totally covered. Your edges are totally covered. And there is no way that water can get underneath there. So it's going to look kind of like this. And you can, clean it up if you need to, but you really just want to make sure that that whole edge is nice and covered. Then what you're going to do is you're going to stick it right inside of the vase. And it's, pin frogs are sharp. So if you want to use, sometimes I'll use a towel or something to push down so that my frog is nice and secure. Once you let it dry for a few minutes, it should be so strong that when you lift it up, it doesn't pull away. So you can see even just after a second, that frog is nice and secure in there. This is great because you can use heavy stems like branches or, just anything heavy in your arrangement, and this frog is going to stay nice in place. I feel like frogs, people probably have frogs at home. If you have a frog at home, you should definitely practice using it because they are fun. They create really interesting designs, and I love them because they are reusable. We have a lot of these vintage frogs that are probably 100 years old that have been used, hundreds if not thousands of times. So frogs are a great sustainable mechanic to use when you're designing. Newer mechanics that's on the market is something called Agra Wool. This is only been on the market for maybe 5 years, maybe less than 5 years. And what it is a plant-based material. It's actually made out of charcoal. And what you do is soak this in water and then form it to fit inside your vase and then place your stems inside of this Agra Wool. So I'm going to cut it to fit inside of my vase first. Pretty good on the first try. And it's okay if it sticks out further, that's no problem. One thing about Agra Wool is that they claim that you can stick the stems right in. I find it sometimes is hard to get your stems inside of this. When it's wet, I didn't soak this one, but when it's wet, you can really, you can get your stems pretty far in. But if you have like a soft stem, like something like ranunculus or tulips, I think it's easier to take like a skewer, this is just like a wood skewer from the grocery store, and pre-cut the hole. And that just helps, I think, especially if the stem is too soft, to poke through the Agra wool. So what you do is just design as if you're designing into, through the chicken wire or through the tape. What that's going to do is just hold your flowers in place. This is also going to keep your flowers hydrated as you design. Another new plant-based mechanic that's on the market is something called OshunPouch. So these OshunPouches are like little pillows full of organic material that, once placed in water, puff up, and then you can place your flower stems right in there. These come in lots of different sizes, so if you go look at my resource list, I'll give you a link to where you can buy these. They come in small, medium, large, extra large, so you can find one that fits perfectly with the arrangement that you're trying to make. So the first thing you're going to do is poke about a dozen holes in each side of the OshunPouch. Doesn't have to be in any order. And then you're going to soak it in water for about 5 minutes. What it's going to do is puff up. So it went from sort of a small, flat OshunPouch to what looks like now more of like a sandbag type of mechanic. And same thing as the Agra wool, you should be able to place your stems right through the packaging. If you have a soft stem, same thing, you might want to use a skewer to just place a hole to place your stem right inside of there. So this mechanic acts the same way pretty much as the Agra wool. What it does is it's hydrating your stems, but it's also keeping them in place. These are great for sort of odd-shaped vases or something that, like, it's really pliable. So you can use it in a lot of different situations. I had a friend who used it last summer for her state fair arrangement, and she put it inside of a boot. So it's squeezed inside of a rain boot, and it was a perfect mechanic for that space. So this is another plant-based, biodegradable, compostable mechanic that's on the market today. One mechanic that I don't use here in my shop is one of the most common mechanics used throughout the floral world, floral foam. So floral foam, if you've ever seen it, you probably have, is the green spongy foam that comes in the bottom of a lot of floral arrangements. For us, this is not a product we want to use because of the environmental impacts it has. This is a single-use plastic. It can only be used one time. It can't be recycled or composted. All you can do is use it once and throw it in the trash. For us, we're always trying to look for sustainable mechanics, reusable mechanics, and floral foam is not one of those. Additionally, it has some ingredients that I myself don't want to use and our designers don't want to use. It's made with formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen, and it can cause negative impacts for people's health when they're using it. So for us, we choose not to use it. Floral foam actually works great. It does what it needs to do. It keeps flowers in place, it keeps flowers hydrated, but there are so many other options available these days that I don't think floral foam is something that's necessary in the floral design world. So that's a look at all of the floral design mechanics that we use here at our shop and that are really common in the floral world. I hope that you'll try these at home because they're really fun and they can open up a lot more opportunities for design, especially with wide vases, shallow bowls, all kinds of dishes. The more you're excited to try these, I think the more interesting and unique your floral designs are going to be. So good luck and have fun designing.